Morning sunlight spilled across the identical houses of Willow Creek Estates, perfectly trimmed lawns, matching mailboxes, American flags swaying in polite harmony. Then a dusty pickup truck rolled slowly through the gates. Military plates. Packed duffel bags. A folded flag on the dashboard. Staff Sergeant Marcus Reed had just come home. He barely made it 10 feet before a security cart cut in front of him. The guard didn't look angry, just nervous. He spoke into his radio first, before speaking to Marcus. Seconds later, a woman in a tailored blazer hurried across the sidewalk, clutching a clipboard like a shield. The HOA president. She scanned his paperwork. Paused. Then her smile vanished. "Sir, there's been a mistake," she said carefully. "You don't meet the community standards." Windows opened across the street. Phones came out. Marcus stared at the house he bought with combat pay, sitting on land his grandfather once farmed. The HOA president taped a violation notice to his own front door before he even unloaded a box. Behind her, a board member whispered, not quietly enough, "We can't let people like him change the neighborhood." Marcus said nothing. He just reached into the truck and lifted out the folded American flag. Right then, a convoy of black SUVs pulled into the driveway next door. Soldiers stepped out. And a U.S. Army general climbed from the car, staring directly at Marcus. He stopped. Then saluted. "If you believe respect should never depend on where someone lives, tell me in the comments. Have you or someone you know ever dealt with HOA abuse? I read every story. And if you want more real-style justice stories like this, subscribe and stay with me till the end, because this one gets unbelievable." Marcus Reed had spent half his life living out of duffel bags and concrete barracks, so when he pulled into the perfectly quiet streets of Willow Creek Estates, the silence almost felt unreal. This wasn't just a house. This was coming home. The engine shut off, and his mother slowly stepped out onto the driveway. She ran her hand along the porch railing like she was touching a memory instead of wood. Her eyes filled before she even spoke. "This used to be your grandfather's land," she whispered. Marcus didn't answer. He reached back into the truck and pulled out an old framed photograph, Elijah Reed standing in open farmland, smiling into the sun, in the exact place where identical green lawns now stretched across the neighborhood. Inside, the boxes opened one by one. Medals. Dog tags. A perfectly folded uniform. He placed them carefully on a shelf. But the item he stared at the longest was an old rusted shovel, which he set quietly in the corner of the garage. Outside, children rode bicycles across ground where crops once grew. The doorbell rang. Linda Carver, the HOA president, stood there holding a welcome basket and a rehearsed smile. But she didn't talk about neighbors. She talked about rules. Flag size regulations. Parking compliance. Guest limitations. Then she handed him a thick binder, already marked with tabs. As she walked away, she added politely, "We take community standards very seriously here." Later that evening, Marcus stood alone in the backyard. His eyes stopped on a fresh survey stake hammered into the soil. Stamped on the tag. Future phase expansion, pending approval. And the line ran directly through his property. For the first time, Marcus realized this might not just be a strict HOA. The first letter arrived the next morning. Marcus found it taped neatly to his front door, not in the mailbox. A bright orange notice. Violation, improper flag display height. He frowned. The flag wasn't damaged, it wasn't oversized, it was regulation military issue. By afternoon, a second notice appeared. Unauthorized vehicle, commercial appearance. His truck. The same truck that still had dust from overseas roads trapped in the tire treads. Marcus ignored it. Then day 3 came. Another notice. And another. And another. Grass shade non-compliant. Trash bin visible for 4 minutes past pickup time. Garage interior visible from sidewalk. Someone was watching constantly. He finally caught them, a woman from the HOA board standing across the street, casually taking pictures of his house like she was photographing a crime scene. That evening, Marcus attended the HOA meeting. A small room filled with folded chairs and polite smiles that disappeared when he walked in. He waited his turn. Hands folded. Calm. When his name was called, he stood and explained he had followed every rule provided to him at closing. Halfway through his sentence, the microphone clicked off. Linda Carver didn't even look embarrassed. "Time limit," she said flatly. Marcus stared at her. No one else's mic had been cut off. He tried again, louder this time, no microphone. The room stayed silent. Eyes avoided his. Then she said it. "Your property does not match the architectural harmony of the community." Marcus blinked once. Architectural harmony? His house was identical to every other house on the street. As the meeting ended, people shuffled out quickly, like they didn't want to be seen standing near him. And near the front table, Marcus noticed something. A man in a suit, not a resident, handed Linda a folder. One page slid partially out. A neighborhood development map. Every lot was marked in blue. Except Marcus's. His was circled in red. The fine started the next week. Not warnings anymore, invoices. $300. $800. Then over $2,000 in less than 7 days. Marcus checked every rule again, twice. Nothing he was doing violated the handbook they gave him. But the letters kept coming. Then the pressure moved beyond paper. His bank called first. A representative politely informed him the HOA had filed a lien request against the property for unresolved compliance violations. The same afternoon, his insurance company sent a cancellation notice, increased risk classification. No explanation. Just canceled. 2 days later the trash wasn't picked up. He watched the truck stop at every house on the street, then skip his without slowing down. That night a security patrol vehicle crawled past his house 3 times, spotlight washing across his living room windows. His mother flinched every time the light hit the walls. The next morning his sister walked outside and froze. Her car was gone. Towed from the driveway for unauthorized overnight parking. Marcus went to the HOA office in person. Locked door. But taped across the glass was a notice, his address printed in bold. Community Standards Violation Property. Neighbors walked past pretending not to read it. Some actually crossed the street to avoid his house. The neighborhood group page exploded that night, posts about protecting property values and keeping the community consistent. No one used his name. But everyone knew. Marcus removed the sign from his lawn and went back inside without a word. While sorting through the closing paperwork again, something slipped from the folder, an older document the realtor never mentioned. A county survey record. Dated decades before the neighborhood existed. The boundary lines didn't match the subdivision map. His property line cut across part of the entrance road. Marcus stared at it, longer this time. Because suddenly, the harassment didn't look random anymore. The house was quiet that night. Too quiet. Marcus sat alone at the kitchen table, the violation letters spread out in front of him like deployment briefings. He'd faced roadside bombs, incoming fire, evacuation chaos. But this felt different. This wasn't loud. It was slow. Deliberate. A helicopter passed overhead, low and sudden. For a split second, his body reacted before his mind did. His breathing tightened. His hands clenched. The room faded, replaced by dust, heat, radio static. Then it was gone. He blinked back into the kitchen. Back into the silence. His mother found him later sitting on the back porch, staring at the dark outline of the neighborhood gate in the distance. "You don't have to fight every battle," she said softly. He nodded. But this wasn't about pride. It was about something deeper. This land wasn't just property. It was his grandfather's last footprint in a place that once tried to erase him. Inside, his uniform hung neatly in the closet. Marcus opened the door and stood there for a long time. He ran his fingers across the patches. The flag on his shoulder. He had worn it overseas with honor. Now he wasn't sure if it meant anything here. For the first time since coming home, a thought crept in. Maybe it would be easier to sell. Walk away. Start somewhere that didn't feel like a battlefield disguised as a neighborhood. But as he stepped back outside, he noticed headlights pulling into the driveway next door. Not a normal moving truck. Black SUVs. And men stepping out who stood like soldiers. Marcus straightened without realizing it. Because something in the air had just changed. The neighborhood had never seen vehicles like that before. 3 black SUVs rolled slowly into the driveway next door, engines quiet but heavy. Doors opened in sequence, not casually, deliberately. The men stepping out didn't look like movers. They scanned the street the way soldiers scan unfamiliar terrain. Marcus watched from his porch. One of them opened the rear passenger door. An older man stepped out in a simple jacket, nothing flashy, nothing dramatic, but the posture was unmistakable. Straight back. Measured movement. Command without effort. Marcus recognized it instantly. Not from a base. Not from a briefing. From years of service. The man noticed him at the same moment. For a brief second they just looked at each other across the lawn, 2 soldiers silently identifying rank, bearing, history. Then the older man walked forward. He stopped at the edge of the property line. And saluted. Not casually. Not politely. Formally. Staff Sergeant Marcus Reed stood up without thinking and returned it. Across the street, curtains shifted. Doors opened. Phones came out again, but this time for a different reason. One of the neighbors whispered loudly, "Is that a general?" The answer came quickly when one of the men addressed him. "Yes, sir." The entire tone of the street changed in a single moment. The man extended his hand. General Thomas Hale. Retired. Marcus shook it. Staff Sergeant Reed. The general nodded once, glancing at the violation notices still taped beside the door. "Problem here, Sergeant?" Marcus hesitated. Months of training told him not to complain upward. But the silence of the past weeks weighed heavier than protocol. "Just paperwork issues, sir." The general looked around the neighborhood, the watching faces, the HOA notice on the lawn, the carefully maintained distance neighbors kept. His eyes narrowed slightly. That afternoon the HOA emergency meeting notice appeared on every mailbox. Mandatory attendance. By evening, the small community clubhouse was full, fuller than any meeting before. Residents packed shoulder to shoulder, murmuring louder than usual. Marcus entered quietly. Then the room went silent again when the general walked in behind him. Linda Carver stood at the front table, smile tight, posture stiff. "General Hale, welcome to Willow Creek Estates." He didn't sit. "I'm here as a resident," he said calmly. "And as a witness." The board members exchanged quick glances. The meeting began. Routine approvals first, landscaping, parking permits, fence colors. No one interrupted. Then Marcus's property came up. Linda cleared her throat. "The board has determined the Reed residence remains non-compliant with community aesthetic." "Explain," the general said. Not loudly. But the word stopped the room. Linda adjusted papers. "The property does not align with established neighborhood harmony." Marcus looked around the room at identical houses. The general folded his hands behind his back. "I've lived on 12 bases," he said. "Across 3 continents. I've seen uniform standards enforced under combat conditions." Silence. "This neighborhood has identical architecture. So the concern isn't architectural." No one spoke. A board member tried to move the agenda forward. "Perhaps we can discuss this privately." No, the general replied. Public decisions stay public. Murmurs spread across the room. Marcus set his documents on the table: purchase deed, inspection report, HOA compliance checklist signed at closing. The HOA attorney leaned toward Linda, whispering urgently. Linda forced a smile. There may have been administrative confusion. The general pointed at the fines. 14 violations in 12 days isn't confusion. A resident in the back raised a hand. I got fined last year for a mailbox color and they gave me 3 months to fix it. More murmurs. Another neighbor spoke up. They towed his sister's car from his driveway. Now the room was shifting. Linda tried to regain control. We are simply protecting property values. The general interrupted for the first time. Property values don't require selective enforcement. The HOA attorney stood quickly. This meeting is adjourned. Sit down, the general said, still calm. The attorney actually hesitated. Then Marcus placed one more paper on the table. The older county survey record. The room leaned closer. The general studied it carefully, then looked up. His voice stayed even. Did the developer disclose the protected parcel designation before approving this subdivision? The question didn't just quiet the room. It froze it. Because the HOA president didn't answer. And the developer representative, standing near the back wall, suddenly looked very aware of every camera pointed at him. For several seconds, no one in the clubhouse moved. The developer representative shifted his weight, forcing a small laugh that didn't land. I'm not sure what you're referring to, he said carefully. The general didn't repeat himself. Instead, he turned the survey toward the residents so everyone could see the county seal stamped across the bottom. Marcus hadn't noticed it before, not really. But now it was obvious. Historical homestead designation, protected parcel. A murmur rolled through the room. Linda Carver blinked. That doesn't change HOA authority. A voice from the back interrupted. The county clerk, who lived 2 streets over, stepped forward holding her phone. It actually does. She opened the county property database and mirrored it onto the clubhouse screen. Old aerial images appeared. First farmland. Then construction phases. Then the modern neighborhood. But one lot stayed outlined in gold the entire time. Marcus's. The clerk zoomed in further. Protected homestead parcels can't be subjected to aesthetic enforcement or architectural conformity rules, she explained. They legally pre-exist the HOA. The HOA attorney leaned toward Linda, whispering rapidly now. Linda's composure cracked for the first time. That designation must have been recorded after development approval, she said quickly. The clerk shook her head. No. She turned the screen so the date filled the wall. The classification had been filed 3 years before the subdivision permits were approved. This time the murmurs turned into open voices. People weren't confused anymore. They were realizing. The HOA hadn't just been strict. They'd been enforcing rules on the one property they legally had no control over. And the general asked the question no one else had yet. Then why was he targeted at all? No one at the front table answered. The room never fully recovered after that question. No one officially ended the meeting, but no one returned to routine business either. Residents stood in small clusters, whispering, comparing fines, rereading the survey projected on the wall like it might change if they blinked. Marcus remained near the table, staring at the highlighted boundary lines. He had bought the house to come home. Not to fight. But the longer he looked at the map, the clearer something became. The gold outline didn't just cover his yard. It ran beyond it. Straight toward the entrance of the neighborhood. The general noticed it too. Zoom out, he said quietly to the clerk. She did. The neighborhood map shrank on the screen, streets, cul-de-sacs, decorative ponds, and then the front gate appeared. The same gate Marcus had been stopped at on the first day. And cutting directly beneath the asphalt road leading to it was the same gold line. The clerk leaned closer. "That's strange," she murmured. Marcus felt the same heavy stillness he used to feel before discovering something buried overseas, that instinct that said this wasn't a coincidence. He opened his closing folder again, slower this time, turning every page carefully instead of searching for one answer. Near the back was a document no one had mentioned at signing. An older deed attachment. Hand-typed. Stamped decades earlier. Agricultural access easement, permanent right of passage. His grandfather's signature sat at the bottom. The room went silent again as the paper passed from hand to hand. The general read it fully before speaking. "This easement predates the subdivision," he said. The developer representative immediately stepped forward. "That access hasn't existed in 40 years, he said quickly. "The land was redeveloped." "An easement doesn't expire because someone pours concrete over it," the general replied. The clerk nodded slowly. "He's right. If the corridor was never legally vacated, the access still belongs to the Reed parcel." People turned toward the windows, toward the front gate outside. The realization spread in pieces. First confusion. Then understanding. Then shock. The entire entrance road sat on his legal access path. Linda's chair scraped loudly as she stood. "That's irrelevant to the violations." "It's exactly relevant," the general said. Marcus finally spoke again, quiet but steady. "You've been finding the only property that legally owns the road leading into your neighborhood." The HOA attorney grabbed the papers, flipping fast now, his confidence visibly gone. This would have been disclosed during development. The developer didn't answer. Because he couldn't. Marcus noticed it first, the way the man avoided eye contact. The general noticed second. And everyone else noticed after. The clerk checked the county permit archive again, typing faster this time. Then she stopped. Her eyes widened slightly. "There's no recorded easement termination filing," she said. The room erupted into overlapping voices. That meant the developer built the gated entrance, on land they didn't fully control. Every house behind that gate depended on a road that legally belonged to Marcus's parcel. Property values. Access rights. Insurance coverage. All of it suddenly uncertain. The HOA attorney stepped aside and whispered urgently into his phone. Linda's voice lowered, trying to recover authority. "We can negotiate." Marcus shook his head gently. "For weeks you tried to push me out." He looked around at the residents, the same neighbors who had avoided eye contact, crossed streets, stayed silent. "I just wanted to live here." The general placed a hand on the table. "This isn't only civil property conflict anymore." He turned toward the attorney. "There's also the question of selective enforcement and discriminatory targeting." The attorney didn't respond. Because right then Marcus's phone vibrated. An email notification. From a federal housing office. The general must have made a call earlier. Marcus opened it slowly. Formal inquiry opened regarding potential discriminatory housing enforcement practices. He exhaled, not relief, not anger, just release. But the final piece hadn't landed yet. The clerk refreshed the permit screen one more time and projected a document onto the wall. Internal planning correspondence. Between the developer and HOA board, attached accidentally to a public filing. Highlighted sentence. If the Reed property owner refuses voluntary sale, enforcement pressures should encourage relocation before Phase 3 expansion. The room fell completely silent. No murmurs this time. No whispers. Just understanding. This was never about rules. They needed his land. And they believed they could make him leave quietly. The general looked directly at the developer. "You didn't just violate procedure," he said calmly. "You built an entire neighborhood assuming the one person with legal leverage would give up." Marcus folded the easement document carefully and held it in his hands. For the first time since coming home. He wasn't the one being pushed. He was the one holding the ground. The courthouse steps were crowded before sunrise. News vans lined the street. Cameras waited behind barricades. What started as a neighborhood dispute had grown into something much larger: property law, discrimination, and a development company now under federal review. Marcus stood quietly beside the general at the top of the stairs. He wore a simple suit, but on his lapel, a small service pin. Inside, the courtroom filled every seat. Residents from Willow Creek sat shoulder to shoulder, some supportive, some uneasy. The HOA board occupied one table with their attorney, papers stacked high but confidence noticeably lower than before. The developer sat beside them, no longer speaking to the press. The judge entered. Conversations died instantly. "Be seated." The case began with routine legal framing: property dispute, civil damages, enforcement authority. Then Marcus's attorney stood. "Your Honor, this is not a disagreement over landscaping rules," she said calmly. "This is a coordinated attempt to remove a lawful property owner from land the defendants required for expansion, land they never legally controlled." A large screen lit up. Exhibit A, original county map. The farmland boundaries appeared. The gold homestead designation circled Marcus's parcel. The judge leaned forward. "Next slide." Exhibit B, subdivision approval plan. Streets, lots, and the entrance road crossing directly through the easement corridor. The developer shifted in his chair. "Next slide." Exhibit C, recorded easement. The hand-typed document filled the courtroom wall. The judge removed his glasses briefly, rereading the date. "Predates development approval by 3 years," Marcus's attorney said. The HOA lawyer stood quickly. The association had no knowledge of. Marcus's attorney clicked the remote. Exhibit D, internal email correspondence. The same highlighted sentence appeared. "Enforcement pressures should encourage relocation." Silence settled heavy across the room. The judge looked directly at the HOA president. "Mrs. Carver, were these enforcement actions initiated after this communication?" Her attorney whispered urgently beside her. She hesitated. "Yes, but..." He raised a hand. "No explanations yet." Next came testimony. The county clerk confirmed the protected parcel status. The surveyor explained the easement had never been legally vacated. Then the towing company owner testified he was instructed to prioritize one address specifically. The courtroom murmured. Finally, Marcus was called. He spoke simply. No anger. No speeches. He described coming home. The notices. The lien attempt. His family being watched. Then he stopped. "I wore the uniform for years and never expected special treatment," he said quietly. "I just expected the same rules as everyone else." The judge nodded slowly. The HOA attorney attempted a final defense, claiming administrative confusion and procedural misunderstanding. The judge looked at the stacked evidence. Then at the developer. "Did your company verify ownership rights before constructing the gated entrance?" The developer swallowed. "No, Your Honor." The judge leaned back, hands folded. The decision came without delay. Selective enforcement is established. Property interference is established. Fraudulent concealment during development approval is established. He paused. And discriminatory targeting is strongly supported by the communication entered into record. The room held its breath. All fines against Mr. Reed are vacated. Liens removed immediately. He continued. The access easement is affirmed. The entrance roadway sits upon the plaintiff's legal corridor. Use of that road now requires his authorization. Gasps echoed across the courtroom. The HOA attorney lowered his head. The judge wasn't finished. Sterling Development Group is ordered to pay damages and legal costs. The Homeowners Association will issue a formal public apology and cease all enforcement actions against the protected parcel. He lifted the gavel slightly, then added one last line. Property rights apply equally. Community standards cannot override the law, nor target the individual. The gavel struck. Reporters rushed out of the courtroom. Residents turned toward Marcus, some ashamed, some relieved. The general placed a hand on his shoulder. For the first time since returning home, Marcus wasn't defending his place there anymore. It had been confirmed. The gate at Willow Creek Estates never looked the same again. A week after the ruling, the oversized Community Standards First banner quietly disappeared. In its place, a simpler plaque was installed near the entrance. Founded on law. Built on respect. No one argued about it. The HOA fines were erased. The lien was removed. And for the first time since moving in, Marcus's mailbox held nothing but ordinary letters. Neighbors began stopping by, awkward at first. A casserole. A handshake. A quiet apology from the man who had once crossed the street to avoid him. Linda Carver delivered the court-ordered public apology herself. She didn't make eye contact for long. She didn't need to. Marcus listened, nodded once, and closed the door gently. That weekend, he stood in his backyard with a shovel, the old rusted one that belonged to his grandfather. Beside him, General Hale helped steady a young oak tree as Marcus lowered it into the soil. "Roots matter," the general said. Marcus covered the base with fresh earth, pressing it down firmly. Across the street, children played again. And when Marcus raised the American flag the next morning, no one questioned whether he belonged. Because now, everyone knew he did.